Hey there, folks. How you doing? Aaron here. We're going to go through Chapter 1 of Theater Collaborative Acts. I agree with it sometimes, and sometimes I think they're a little New York centric. It is the hub of our industry for the most part in America. But there is a lot of regional theater out there in other markets and other cities, in towns near you, in Scranton, in Bloomsburg. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to add a little extra information and things like that. So let's get started. I got a PowerPoint here for you. Just a reminder, you should have read pages 1 through 22. Prior to this slideshow. I'm augmenting and kind of highlighting the big points, but we want to offer some more context and hopefully reaffirm some things so that you know what's important. Here we go, Chapter 1. All right, so this is, make sure that you got the 4th edition. That's the pages I'm calling out, so just wanted to double check and make sure everyone knows that. This is pages 1 through 22. Okay, so first things first, theater is a two-sided coin, two sides of the same coin. I would say even more so than certainly popular film or music. Theater is both art and entertainment. And both sides of the coin sort of operate differently and certainly have a different type of financial model to make it go. But they also can coexist together. So we'll take a look at entertainment first. Theater's entertainment is in the audience's comfort zone, right? Much like my 12-year-old son, who would, if given the opportunity, would stay in his sweatpants all the time, and even when he leaves the house. That's not ideal, but that is theater as entertainment. It is very comfortable, and the audience is never getting provoked out of that comfort zone. It can provide a diversion for life and reality. It is an escape from reality. Oftentimes, entertainment is giving you something that is outside of what your everyday life looks like, and it reinforces social values that are already yours. Oftentimes, entertainment can side skirt the harder challenges about what it is to be a human, simply to keep that comfort, because when our social values are challenged, then it gets uncomfortable. So I believe that art and entertainment should go hand in hand. They should be folded in. My colleague Kimie Maroya often says that you got to have broccoli mixed in with your mac and cheese, your vegetables in with the nutritious stuff or the tasty stuff. So when we're dealing with art as entertainment, we want to challenge the audience. We want to potentially provoke them. I think that different theater artists have different ideas about how that works the best. But ultimately, we want to give them a different look at life. We want to give them a focused version of reality. As I just mentioned before, we have I'm married to a children's librarian. And she talks about stories, windows stories or mirror stories, windows that show you a different kind of life, and mirrors that reflect back to you what it is to be human in your life. And sometimes that can be hard. And art shows us ultimately, the art side of theater shows us what it is to be human. Theater as art can be, should be, I believe, entertaining. It should be doing both of those things. All right, so we're going to take a look at a bunch of different functions that theater serves within a society. Here are all the subheadings that you can find in your textbook, and we'll go through each one as we go here. First off, theater and religion, theatrical nature of religious ritual. Theater actually began as religion, at least in our Western context, and in a lot of cultures continues on as a religious part of their life, beginning with the Greeks in our Western tradition and then moving on through till now, and was often used by the church in the medieval times in certain degrees, morality plays and things like that. And certainly today we still have nativity plays or telling Bible stories, that sort of thing. Beginnings of theater are associated with religion, as I mentioned, with the Greeks. And we'll talk more about that when we get to acting. But theater and socialization, ultimately it looks to teach, to please. Oftentimes it can show us how to behave. I often think plays like Romeo and Juliet or similar types of titles that show people in love kind of teach us how to be in love or how to be romantic and where that can go wrong. It can be cautionary. Teaches us moral values and acceptable life lessons. To take Romeo and Juliet, right? Yes, it's nice to be romantic and fervent and hope that everything will work out all right, but probably not the best thing to pretend that you're dead because someone might also die. That sort of thing. Theater and politics. This is an interesting one because I think politics right now is such a divisive topic. But politics in this instance is just something that I've heard it said that all art is political. It's hard to look at art as anything other than a conversation about how we fit into our society. In this instance, in the textbook, it's looking at it kind of directly politically. It's looking to reinforce the status quo, to celebrate national heroes. That certainly in folk tales and things like that. There are a bunch of plays about Abe Lincoln and about Supreme Court justices and things like that. It is to deliver propaganda, and this is actually the positive term of propaganda. It is the idea that I want to give you information and I want you to, it is a particular viewpoint as opposed to in some plays it's more, well, here's the theme, here's the story, but you can make up your own mind. Theater and politics, and particularly political theater, is geared to teach you a specific thing and for you to walk away with a specific thing. And lastly, it can offer patriotic support. So the instance I would offer with that in mind is in the World War II era, war bonds were the way that the government was funding the war effort. And so you can actually see this if you ever watch Captain America First Avenger, where they send Steve Rogers out on the road asking to buy war bonds. And that was a real thing. Shows were produced in that way. Theater entertainments were produced in that way to get support for the war effort. And we can see certainly theater around apparent in our society, particularly in the way that political rallies are used. If you've ever watched a party rally, it is a theatrical event. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily theater itself, but that certainly they're taking cues and making entertaining things that are real serious. Theater and subversion. So this is more along the lines of challenging the status quo, to subvert it, to say what you believe or what you see in your day-to-day, there are other options. It often offers a forum for dissent against a situation where folks either may be oppressed or may be in the opposition seat. Politically or culturally. It can also argue directly for change. There was a big movement post-COVID, a letter to a lot of the big corporate theaters, commercial theaters, and regional theaters saying, we see you, white theater, by a bunch of black artists, and that was a big part of post-COVID, saying we want to produce plays about our stories, and we've been left out of the conversation for a long time. And post-COVID, that is has been a major theme in how American theater is shaped and where we continue to struggle financially. You can also challenge indirectly. This is kind of along the lines I was saying earlier, the broccoli in with the mac and cheese, that will tell you a story, and that the characters who may be flipping the script, where the folks who aren't part of the status quo wind up happily ever after, whereas the folks who are maintaining the status quo are painted in a bad light. But it's still an entertaining story and helps folks to it and seeing it differently. Theater and coercion is very different than subversion. Subversion is assuming that we are all equal, or are all coming to the theater as equals. Coercion is used more by repressive regimes. Governments that are looking to give you the government's line of thinking, and this is the proper way, and that you don't really get a choice in what you see. Examples of this would be Nazi Germany, the Cultural Revolution in China, and the Soviet Union. That's what the book is citing. I would also say, but we are seeing the current administration taking bigger steps, mostly in attacking theatrical funding. The NEA, the National Endowment of the Arts, recently has been very heavily altered by the Trump administration this time around, and so they are a granting organization. So if theaters can ask them for money, they provide money, and so that means if we get that money, we are able to produce whatever we wrote that grant for. In this last political cycle, it normally goes yearly. It's a granting cycle that goes yearly. This administration basically took off the plate what was there and said to all the theaters that were given the grant, nope, you can't do that. Those projects, we want you to write about these projects. And so they're not saying, they're not infringing on the First Amendment entirely, but they are making it very difficult to tell certain narratives. And that, I would say, is not necessarily to the point of, I mean, I guess it depends upon your perspective. It's not to the point of Nazi Germany, but we are seeing some political movers really impacting the stories that we get to tell each other. And that's something to keep in mind as we're looking at all this stuff. I should say, hi, this is our first slideshow, and I'm going to do my very best to keep a neutral line on the political side of things, and just say what my experience is as a theater maker. Try and leave space for everybody to weigh in on it. And perhaps as we get further into the semester and I learn who you are and you learn who I am, we can have those conversations. I think those conversations are important, just to know where each other are, because we're all human and we'll figure out how to coexist together as we continue on in this. So, just a second. Theater and empowerment. Theater is a tool for healing, for individual growth, for facilitating group process, figuring out kind of what I just said, where we all stand with one another, and providing equal access to folks who maybe have a harder time getting to cultural events. Notice in a lot of my theatrical collaborators, because theater is so expensive to make, and it's hard not to pass on the costs. We try really hard not to pass on the costs in not-for-profit land to our theater-going public, but it can be really hard because inflation gets big, and so we try really hard to provide equal access to all the folks in our community. Not always the case, but in where I work, that is the case. Theater and exploration. Theater is a place to explore something other than our own experience, to examine cultural contexts of performance. We can learn about other cultures. We can experience past time periods about the way things used to be, and sometimes that reflects very clearly what our lives look like now. Transgressing cultural boundaries, so it's a healthy place to try out an idea or live through an idea without actually having to commit fully to it as an individual. and that sometimes can be viewed, when we were talking about religion earlier, can be viewed as the sort of moral transgression that somehow or other you, just by watching it, are transgressing. I think it's probably a easier pathway, or a gateway to understand something, as opposed to actually needing to do it yourself. I think that's a healthy way of looking at it, and non-traditional casting would be one of those ways. This book was written in 2013, pre-COVID, and there have been some really strong changes and shifts in what non-traditional casting would be. I think Wainscoat and Flesher were writing more about, for instance, in Shakespeare. In our country, we are seeing a lot of times that we're either doing gender blind, or gender conscious, color blind, or color conscious casting. We'll talk more about that when we get to acting. But the who gets to tell the stories is a big part of the current theater industry conversation, and but it would give regards to transgressing cultural boundaries, it gives us the opportunity to give someone who wouldn't get to go through and experience that experience. It's very majority coded language, but that is where the book is coming from. Theater and cultural exploration gives us a double context. It gives us a culture for which the play was written, and culture for which the play is performed. So we're all often dealing with plays that were written prior to the time that they're being performed, sometimes decades before. And so we have that context. And then we also have the context for which it is performed, and you can see them impact upon each other. Past within the present, any period piece, but even play like Radiant Berman that I'm in currently was written in 2015. And even some of that thinking feels slightly different, certainly past the COVID and lockdown and rising housing prices. We also get cultural meeting place. It is a time and a place for everyone to meet, and I believe this is my ideal, and it gets harder and harder the more the middle ground goes away, for differing ideas to come in and meet in a safe place or a courageous place where we are not at war with one another. We're just all human beings, and we are all facing something, a story, and figuring out where we lie within it. Now, these can be really strongly opposed ideas to have these kind of conversations. It doesn't sell soap sometimes. Sometimes they are uncomfortable, and sometimes society says no, 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 for one reason or another. Morality is one of the major themes of that. There was a lot of early Christian opposition to theater in the Middle Ages. Actors were actually on the bottom rung of society at that time. Along with prostitutes and beggars, actors were right along there. Plato also was not a fan of the theater, whereas Aristotle was. And social ostracism can be this as well. Actors and folks who pretend for a living sometimes have been portrayed as non-trustworthy. I think that culturally and particularly economically, actors have a different standing in America's society right now. But for a long time, and I'm sure in certain sects in America, that idea of somehow morally backward is part of their understanding. Theater regulation. There's a long history of theater regulation. Attempts to regulate theatrical activity, along with banning books and banning stories, telling us what kind of stories we can tell. Spoke to that a little earlier. Is a part of our society. A censorship of plays, both in dissident sentiments and ideas considered dangerous to society. There are different governments that will try to, governments and industry or commercial entities, because, well, that's uncomfortable, and so we can't sell soap with that. We can't produce that play. We often see that narrative in our society. And then methods of subterfuge, where I'm going to try to get the story I want told in along with this, and if you tell that kind of story, then I will give you more money. That is something that we see in American society because we aren't subsidized. Censorship. That operates differently depending upon where you are. The book goes into censorship both in England and the United States. Pre-production censorship tends to be kind of what I just said, where money tied to producing the story is often a reason why or why not to do the show. And once you're doing the show, that's a different kind of censorship, but that idea of, well, do we not? We're actually currently in a play selection process at Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble, and we have these conversations all the time about what plays can we afford to do, and the plays that we really want to do, we're afraid that perhaps they won't make the money they need to make in order for us to continue making theater together. And suppression of dissent, particularly from positions of power. Having a platform, a large platform where hundreds of people come and see you every night, is a place to voice dissent. It's also a thing that can feel very dangerous to people in power. And then suppression of public safety. So the idea that if you have a group of people together and they get angry at the same time and there's a riot, that is often a time when we've seen productions get canceled, productions being pushed back against for public safety purposes. It's something it can be a very powerful thing, theater. Theatrical choice in America. So this is actually kind of the assignment that you'll be looking at. I'd like you to be aware of what kind of choices you have as a theater-going audience. Professional, of course, folks who get paid to do what they do, and it is their job, just like people, lawyers and doctors and all sorts of professions. Then there's amateur theater, folks who they're not getting paid to do the work, they're doing it just for passion. Amateur is actually a synonym with passion, a passionate person, or for the love of, right? Love. And then there can be a hybrid between the two, where one way or other there are professionals and amateurs in the same setting, and we'll go through and talk through their different kinds of that. Professional theater in America kind of goes in two different directions, commercial and not-for-profit. Commercial would include Broadway, touring productions. This is actually the Community Arts Center in Williamsport, where they bring in touring productions. They're not local professionals, but they are brought in from New York generally, or Chicago. Off-Broadway would be theater in New York, but not operating at the financial scale of Broadway. A lot of times these three have relationships with union organizations that tell them what kind of contract and how much folks can get paid. And then lastly, there are other versions. This is John Mulaney from Oh Hello. Nick Kroll is back behind there. But the sort of passion projects that may or may not be on Broadway, but fit into the economic structure of Broadway's financial bearing. But commercial enterprises are really only there to make money. There is very little, not necessarily, I don't want to say there's not social good, but commercial projects are dealing with such a large scale financial investment from investors, from producers, that they need to see an investment back or a return back. And so that often impacts the kind of stories that are being told and how. Then we got not-for-profit. That's the kind of theater that I work for. We are less driven necessarily by profits. Money is still a big part of it because it is a professional company. You have to pay your artists, you have to pay your artisans and the designers and all of your admin. But there is a board, a governing board. No one is investing necessarily into the company, but there's a governing board that is responsible for the financial health of the company. The 501c3 is the most common not-for-profit recognized by the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. and there are certain, again, certain union and non-union versions of a not-for-profit. A resident theater, these are large theaters, LORT theaters, League of Resident Theaters. They tend to be one or two within major metropolitan areas. This is the Arden in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia there are two. I'm sorry, the others escape me, but the Arden is one, and I'll think of it as we go along here. It's not the Walnut. Walnut's not a Lord Theater. And anyway, but they are basically a different kind of union contract for the equity actors and stage union actors, IATSE. And so they deal with a significant amount of cash and have a lot of fundraising that they need to do in order to stay open. Others, non-Lord theaters, can be union or non-union. This is actually shaker festivals would certainly fit into this that are not necessarily Lord theaters. I think this is Oregon Shakes in Asheville, Oregon. And then there are ensemble theaters that, like the theater that I belong to. This is actually not our company. This is Team Sunshine in Philadelphia. Makoto Hirano and Ben Chapman. They are a group of three theater professionals, three actors, and they have a governing board. They do fundraising, but they're not. But they basically go show by show, project by project. BTE is sort of a split between a regional theater, kind of fits in that other, but we are also an ensemble theater. We have a group of resident artists that live and work in the company. Resident theaters can have that similar ensemble model, but it gets harder and harder to maintain that group of resident actors that stay on. Then from professional, we move on to amateur. Amateur, again, means the love of something. Educational is one category that goes from elementary school all the way through college. It can also be continuing education for folks who are still learning how to be actors and directors and stage technicians. And then there's also the community theater. The goal is not to necessarily educate, but to create community. Of course, education can happen there, but it is folks doing theater for the love of doing it. Theater for the community that they're in. And then between professional and amateur, there are our hybrid models. There are a bunch of different ones. There are equity and student showcases. This is folks who are not getting paid, generally. There are equity contracts for showcase models, but you're basically producing a show in order to be seen by industry professionals. So unpaid folks, they're not professional. They're not in a professional production, but they are working towards some form of professional outcome. There are also professional and community hybrid models. This picture is actually from the Young Vic Company in Baltimore. They are exclusively a producer of Gilbert and Sullivan musicals every summer. They bring in professional musicians and opera singers to sing the primary roles, and then the chorus is made up of community members. And so there are both paid and unpaid folks in those shows. Then there are theater of place productions, devised community projects. Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble has done this in the past, and some of our ensemble members have gone on to make careers in traveling around the country, devising community projects where sometimes community people are in the show, sometimes they are simply just interviewed and are the source for whatever the story is that is being told by professional actors. But again, it tends to be a blend of professional and non-professional or paid or non-paid folks making the production. Very often the story is from the space or place that the art is being made, and so it really strongly ties into who we are as human beings, and less about how we're making it. The focus is on who and where we are and who we're making theater for. And then lastly, the last category is a teaching artist and a student collaboration. Oftentimes you can see this in the university setting where a professional actor, a professional director, a professional designers come in and teach burgeoning artists, but where you are learning alongside a professional. We do it at BT as well. Most of our Christmas shows and our summer shows have kids from 8 to 14, sometimes up to 18, where they are learning, and we as ensemble members are getting paid, but we're all together doing the thing together, doing the show together. And there's a lot of learning that can happen in that instance. So that would be a hybrid of educational amateurism and professional. So to sum up, theater has a lot of cultural context and impacts your personal experience. It does both. So a theatrical performance is a collaboration not only between the people making it, but also with the audience. So whoever is sitting in the audience is greatly impacting what that performance is on any given night. A place for past, present, and future to merge. Of course, if it is a written play, if it's not an improv show, and often even improv shows are dealing with past experience to make it go. The play itself was written and devised in the past with context from the past. It is only happening in the present right now, and then we take it and project ourselves into the future now that we've gone through the process of viewing this thing. What have we learned, and who will we be after we've seen this event? And it is also both a cultural and personal event. So it is a place where we all gather together, whether we agree or we don't agree, but we're all coming to the same place to share time and share air together. And then me as an individual audience member, it is a personal event for me. I'm experiencing it myself. My experience is enhanced by the people I'm watching it with, but it is also something that I will take, hopefully, and will think about how it impacts me personally and who I am. So hopefully that helps, offers some context for the reading that you got to read. I will post, I forgot to mention, the Community to Place picture was a picture of the Theater Arts Collective, or Farm Arts Collective in Wayne County. I'm going to post a quick video in this week's module. I'd like you to take a look at it. It's in your backyard for a lot of you, and does some really interesting work where there are community members that participate in those shows, and then professionals that help craft and write the work that they make. Hope you have a good, one of my lights just fell down. I hope you guys have a great week. This landed a lot later, and I'm still discovering what it is to be a full-time actor and to teach you all. I think modules will probably be landing rather on Mondays, probably on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, and you'll still have a full week to view it before there's a new thing landing. So thanks for your patience as it comes to you, and I hope you have a great week. Cheers.